You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk. And as promised, this is my 2021 NBA trade deadline recap show. So I'm going to be breaking down all the trades that happened in advance of 3 p.m. Eastern Time today. So with that in mind, I have to start with the Nikola Vujovic trade. Vujovic and Al-Farouq Aminu are going to the Bulls in exchange for Wendell Carter, Otto Porter, and the Bulls' first rounders this year and in 2023. You know what? You've got to commend the Bulls for going for this. They're the 10 seed right now, and there is a way for the 10 seed to make the playoffs. If you don't know, there is going to be a play-in tournament for the 7 and 8 seeds in both conferences. The way it works is, let's take the current standings for this hypothetical. The Hawks would play the Celtics, the Pacers would play the Bulls, the Mavericks would play the Spurs, and the Grizzlies would play the Warriors. The winner of that 7-8 matchup, so Hawks Celtics and Mavs Spurs, is the 7th seed. That's etched in stone, write it in ink. The loser of that game would face the winner of the 9-10 game from their own conference. So whoever won Pacers Bulls and Grizzlies Warriors would face the loser of the other play-in game from their conference. Then whoever wins that game is the 8th seed. But the Bulls aren't playing for a play-in spot with this. No, they're looking to go on a big run. They can theoretically be the 4 seed with this. They're only 3 games behind the Hornets. Granted, they have a lot of teams to leapfrog, but they just added one of the best centers in the NBA. I mean, the Bulls for a long time have been going with this youth movement. This is the year that our young guns finally step up. This is the year that this core finally coalesces. It hasn't happened. I mean, Zach LaVine is one of the best players in the NBA. He's easily top 30. Some people may even put him higher. Lauri Markkanen is a really good stretch 4, and Coby White looks like he's one of the better young point guards in the game. But those 3 guys can't get it done by themselves. They were looking to a young gun like Wendell Carter, a former first-round pick, to step up and be the next Bill Cartwright. And Otto Porter is on a huge contract. The guy's putting up less than 10 points a game. Yeah, it's not working. That team needed a little bit of a shakeup. So in exchange for 2 expendable pieces and 2 firsts, but again, those are just pieces of paper, the Bulls got one of the best centers in the NBA. A guy who can stretch the floor, who's averaging 24.5 points per game this year, who's averaged a double-double in 3 straight seasons, who's made the All-Star game in 2 of the last 3 seasons. You've got to tip your cap to the Bulls. This makes perfect sense. I mean, yeah, the 2 firsts are rough. If this blows up, if the Bulls don't make the playoffs, they just gave up a lottery pick. That's a tough pill to swallow, but the one thing I'll say is, Vujovic is under contract for next season and the season after. So your window to win really hasn't changed. You just dialed up the pressure a little bit, which is fine, because I love this starting 5. Coby White, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, Lauri Markkanen, and Nikola Vujovic. There's no weak link in that starting lineup. You want to tell me Patrick Williams? Okay, fine, but realize, he's a rookie. He's 19. There are going to be some growing pains there. Yes, taking him at 4th overall was a major reach. No one liked that pick. But Williams hasn't embarrassed himself. He's putting up 9.5 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 46% from the field, 38% from beyond the arc. He's starting every game. He's playing 28.5 minutes per game. He's not bad. Williams is fine. You know, I'll tell you, if he's the worst player in your starting 5, you're doing something right. I mean, look, the Bulls can definitely beat the Pacers in a 1-game playoff. They'll play the Hawks tough, and they'll play the Celtics tough. The one thing I'll say is, I'm not a big Al-Farouq Aminu fan. I just don't think he's that good. He's a decent defender, tough player, but that's about it. I'd much rather have Otto Porter, but it makes perfect sense for the Magic to insist upon trading, in essence, Aminu for Porter. Porter's on the last year of his deal. There are talks that he could be bought out. And Aminu is under contract for next year at over $10 million. The Magic don't need a guy like that. Let them keep their cap space. Let them use it on their future core. Their injury-prone core of Markelle Fultz, John Isaac, Mo Bamba, and Cole Anthony. Yeah, it's going to be tough sledding for the Magic for the next 5 years or so. The 2 firsts will help, there's no question. The one thing I'll say is, I'm not crazy about the idea of Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter playing together. Neither one of those guys are really good shooters. I mean, yeah, they're both making an effort to get better. Give them credit for trying, but they're never going to be like Porzingis. Hell, they're never going to be Vujovic. What, is the plan for Bamba to keep coming off the bench? Okay. But how much better is Wendell Carter than Mo Bamba? I mean, if you look at the stats, you'll say it's Carter, no question. The simple fact is, Carter's getting more playing time than Mo Bamba. If you look at their per 36 minutes stats, it's close. I'm not crazy about this trade for the Magic. I gotta be honest with you. Okay, great. They created cap space for a core that will be lucky to play 40 games together a year. They're just too blasted injury prone. And they got 2 firsts that probably aren't going to be that good. I do think the Bulls are going to make the playoffs this year, and 2023, God only knows. Nothing is stopping the Bulls from making the playoffs in 2023. Let's put it that way. Great trade for Chicago. They easily win it. Speaking of the Magic, they traded Evan Fournier to the Celtics, and all they got was 2 stinking second rounders. It's like those t-shirts you see. I went to Vegas and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. I traded Evan Fournier and all I got were 2 lousy picks. All Evan Fournier can get is 2 second rounders? I don't care if he's on an expiring contract or not, he's one of the most underrated shooters in the NBA. I've always liked Fournier. You know, he's put up at least 12 points per game in the last 7 seasons. See, the thing with Fournier is he's a shooter and he starts. Unless you're an elite shooter like Joe Harris, that's not going to work. Fournier's better off coming off the bench. But it's not like he'd hold a team back starting. Evan Fournier is not the reason that the Magic are where they are. The only thing that I can think of is that the Magic didn't want to take on any salary for next year. Why? You're telling me you couldn't get a good young player for Evan Fournier? Maybe not like an upper tier young gun, but second tier? Maybe? Third tier? Definitely? This is Evan Fournier we're talking about. Really good shooter. I mean, the Celtics win this trade easily. It's not even close. They had the Gordon Hayward trade exception, so they didn't need to send a player out to get a guy with Fournier's salary. They gave up 2 seconds, incredibly reasonable for Fournier. You could talk me into giving up a first for him. If I'm a playoff team, yeah, I'll give up a first for Evan Fournier. I mean, the Celtics' depth has been tested all year because they've been bit by the injury bug hard. Kemba Walker has only played in 26 games. Marcus Smart has only played in 25 games. They've needed depth all year, and they just added a fantastic depth option in Evan Fournier. You know what? I'll say this. Because of this move, the Boston Celtics will not have to play in the play-in round. They're only a game and a half behind the Hornets for the 4 seed. If you were to write down on a piece of paper what the Celtics needed, it would look a lot like Evan Fournier, a quality bench piece. Fantastic trade for them. The one thing I'll say, though, and I have to say this as a Nets fan, or else I'll get my fan card revoked, this in no way pushes them past the Nets in terms of being favorites to win the East, win the title, whatever you want to say. They still didn't use the assets that they got from the Pearson-Garnett trade as well as they could have. Oh, actually, just to put a finer point on the trade, this just came out. The Magic are getting a player back for Fournier. Jeff Teague. Not All-Star Jeff Teague. Current Jeff Teague. Solid backup point guard. There's a role for him in the NBA. He's averaging just under 7 points per game. He's shooting 41.5% from the field, 46.5% from beyond the arc. But this doesn't make the trade any better for the Magic. They should have been able to get a true building block for the future. Not someone who's actually older than Fournier. Unreal. The Magic completed their fire sale by trading Aaron Gordon and Gary Clark to the Nuggets in exchange for Gary Harris, R.J. Hampton, and the Nuggets' protected first rounder in 2025. With this move, the Denver Nuggets have vaulted themselves into being taken seriously as the team that my beloved Nets will take on in the NBA Finals. If you add Aaron Gordon to a Nuggets lineup that has Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter, and Will Barton, that may be the best starting lineup in the West. It's either them or the Jazz. It's better than the Lakers. Assuming everyone is healthy with the Lakers, they have the star power. But once you get past that top two, edge Nuggets. Same thing with the Clippers. The Nuggets really needed to upgrade a power forward because Paul Millsap stinks. Alright, I really don't like Millsap. He's past his prime. No-showed in the playoffs last year. His best days are behind him. You replace him with Aaron Gordon, I'm okay with Millsap coming off the bench. I mean, is Gordon a great player? The answer is no, but he's really good. Super athletic, we all know this, great dunker. This year he's putting up 14.6 points per game, 6.6 rebounds per game, and 4.2 assists per game. He's shooting 43.7% from the field, 37.5% from three. He's finally learning how to shoot. This is an incredible move for the Nuggets. They have a real chance of representing the West in the NBA Finals. They also got Gary Clark. He's really just a throw-in. He's a guy without a position. The way he plays is quite honestly more conducive to the way a center should play, but he's 6'6". Forget playing center. He's too small to be a power forward. He's been playing more small forward this year, and it's not working. He has had a dismal season. He's a man without a position. I don't care that the NBA is going more positionless. There's just no place in the NBA for Gary Clark. It's just that simple. He was a throw-in. You can't take him seriously. Now, I will say, I like the pieces that the Magic got back. I like Gary Harris. I loved him coming out of Michigan State. I thought he was going to be a great shooter. And you know what? For a couple seasons he was. Then he just got worse and worse and worse. This year he's putting up less than 10 points a game. He's shooting just 32% from beyond the arc. He needs a great shooting coach quickly, or else he's gonna flame out of the NBA. And he's on a big contract, too. Next year he's due over $20 million. For the Magic's sake, I hope he rights the ship. I think he can. I'm not going to give up on him just yet. He's 26 years old. But he's got to do it sooner rather than later. As for R.J. Hampton, he just wasn't getting much of a chance to show what he could do with the Nuggets. Jamal Murray's backup is Monte Morris. Morris is a really good backup point guard. There was no place for Hampton to play. I mean, when he played, he didn't set the world on fire. But I'm not going to give up on him. I really liked him in this past NBA draft. And the pick is a solid get. In essence, he got 2 first-rounders. You got Hampton, first-round talent, jury's still out on him, and he got a 2025 first. That's a solid haul for the Magic, and I don't mind them blowing things up. They've tried this core of Vujovic, Gordon, and Fournier for a while. It hasn't worked. They haven't won a playoff series since 2010. I got news for you. Dwight Howard, Vince Carter, Rashard Lewis, and Jameer Nelson are gone. They did need to blow things up. They did need to rebuild. Here's the thing, though. Going forward, how are you going to make these pieces work? Let's think of the building blocks that the Magic have now. Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, R.J. Hampton, maybe Gary Harris, Jonathan Isaac, maybe Chuma Okeke, Wendell Carter, and Mo Bamba. I just don't see how you're making that work. Yes, you've fleshed out your bench for the future. You now have depth. I understand that. But what's the starting lineup going to look like? I mean, you're going to have really good young players coming off the bench. It just seems like they're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. I mean, look, do they have time to put it all together? The answer is yes. It's not like they need to get this all sorted out now. They'll have a whole off-season to do it. But it's going to be tough. I'll reiterate what I said earlier. The Magic are in for some lean years. Moving on now to the Raptors, trading Norman Powell to the Trailblazers for Rodney Hood and Gary Trent Jr. I'll be honest with you. The Raptors made out like bandits here. This is a fantastic trade. In essence, this is a one-for-one trade because Rodney Hood has done nothing this year. He's averaging less than 5 points a game. He's shooting just 36% from the field, less than 30% from beyond the arc. He's on a really bad contract. He's due just under $11 million next year. Can he right the ship? The answer is yes. Much like Gary Harris, he's done it in the past. But he's going to need a great shooting coach. Maybe him and Harris can train together. So really this trade just boils down to Norman Powell for Gary Trent. Is Norman Powell that much better than Gary Trent? The answer is no. Powell is better, okay? But he's not leaps and bounds better. In essence, what the Trailblazers said here is, we're willing to pay Norman Powell, but we're not willing to pay Gary Trent. Why? Powell's going to turn 28 in 2 months. Yes. He's shooting the cover off the ball. 19.5 points per game. Almost 50% from the field. Almost 44% from beyond the arc. He's having a career year. Make no mistake about it. You know who has similar numbers? Worse, but similar? And is much younger? Gary Trent. Trent is 22. He's averaging 15 points per game this year, shooting 41.5% from the field, and just under 40% from beyond the arc. Powell can be an unrestricted free agent next year. Trent is going to be a restricted free agent next year. Why? Why would you get rid of Gary Trent, someone who you can bring back? You'll have the right to match any contract he gets. For Norman Powell, a guy who you don't have that right on. Gary Trent is not that much worse than Norman Powell. Powell is better, okay? He is. But not by much. This doesn't put the Blazers over the hump. They really didn't need Powell. They have Lillard, they have Simons, they have McCollum, and they had Trent. Powell is an upgrade, but he's not a huge upgrade. The Raptors made out like bandits. If they didn't think Powell was going to re-sign, great, fantastic. Get Gary Trent, someone who you have control over. Great move by the Raptors. They easily win this trade. Moving on now to the Hawks, trading Rajon Rondo to the Clippers for Lou Williams and 2 second-rounders. When I saw this, I almost fell off my chair. What are the Clippers doing? How do you trade Lou Williams? Lou Williams is one of the best bench players in the NBA. Was Williams having as great a year as he usually has? The answer is no. He was putting up just 12 points a game. A far cry from the 18 to 20 that you usually get from him. But he was actually shooting the ball more efficiently than he did last year. 42.1%. He's on pace for a career high in three-point percentage. 37.8. And oh yeah, he's a million times better than Rajon Rondo. Rajon Rondo is not having a good year. Rondo's putting up less than 4 points a game, for God's sake. What, did you want a passer? Is that what you wanted? You wanted a distributor? That's all well and good. You don't trade Lou Williams for him. Look, the Clippers could have used a ball handler, a really good passer, a really good distributor, someone who makes his teammates better. I get that. You can't trade Lou Williams for him, though. No. Oh my God, this makes the Clippers so much worse. Their bench just took a major hit. I don't care that Williams is a pending free agent. I don't care who else you have on that bench. That bench is going to take a major hit. I mean, the Hawks just got a lot better. And again, they're the 7th seed. Are we that convinced that they're gonna collapse? Nate McMillan is doing a fantastic job. I'm not sold on the Hornets. I'm not sold on the Heat. I'm not sold on the Pacers. The Hawks just got a lot better here. They easily win this trade. This is a landslide. This is almost as bad as the Fournier trade. Almost. And while I'm bringing that up, please don't Google Evan Fournier's last name. I made the mistake of doing it. I'm going to have nightmares for a month. Also, Lou Williams has to be really happy that he's back in Atlanta. He really loves a certain establishment's chicken wings. If you don't get the reference, I'll let you look it up yourself. Moving on now to the Rockets, trading Victor Oladipo to the Heat for Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a pick swap in 2022. The Heat win this trade easily, and the Rockets lost it epically. Victor Oladipo was one of the pieces that the Rockets got back in exchange for James Harden. They really thought he could help them contend more than Karis LeVert and or Jared Allen. Oladipo only played 20 games for him before the Rockets realized, you know what? We're not going to be able to re-sign this guy. We have to trade him for pennies on the dollar. They get two guys in Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk who are good players. Bradley's a good perimeter defender. He has a solid offensive game. And I like Kelly Olynyk. Good backup center. But why didn't you take LeVert? Why didn't you take Allen? It makes no sense. The fact that the Rockets actually thought they could still contend after trading James Harden proves that Tillman Fertitta and Raphael Stone are inept. I feel sorry for Steven Silas. He was probably told when he took the Rockets job, you're going to get to coach James Harden. You'll be fine. You'll make the playoffs. Now the Rockets are dead in the water. Here's a newsflash for you. Picks are pieces of paper. You have no idea who's going to be available with them. You have no idea if you're going to hit on them. You don't know anything about them. If you can get good young players, you take them over the picks. Take some less picks and get LeVert and Allen. God, the Rockets are dumb. Now Oladipo gets to go to the Heat and form probably the best defensive trio in the NBA with himself, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. I'll say this, as a Nets fan, I don't want to face them. They're going to be a tough out for any team. There's no doubt about it. The Heat won this trade by a landslide. Moving on now to the Pistons, trading DeLon Wright to the Kings for Corey Joseph, the Lakers' second rounder this year, and the Kings' second rounder in 2024. And this move makes sense for both sides. DeLon Wright is better than Corey Joseph. This year he's putting up 10.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game. He's shooting 46.5% from the field, 35% from beyond the arc, which is just average at best. I understand that. But overall, Wright is a better player than Joseph. He just is. Joseph is only putting up 6.5 points per game this year, under 2.5 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists per game, 44.5% from the field, which is good, but only 33% from beyond the arc. I mean, the Kings upgraded their backup point guard. There's no question about that. And all they had to give up were 2 second rounders. Who cares? Both of these guys are under contract for next year. Joseph's contract, though, is only partially guaranteed for $2.4 million until August 1st. Then he'll be due $12.6 million. So the Pistons can save some money if they want. I mean, the one thing I'll say is the Kings aren't going to be making the playoffs this year. And I don't see them making the playoffs next year. Granted, anything's possible, but it's tough for me to picture it. So if you want to say, why are the Kings trying to get better when they have no chance of doing anything, I understand that. But realize, they got better and they gave up next to nothing to do it. I'm not going to begrudge a team for doing that. If they gave up a first, then yeah, terrible move. 2 seconds, that's easy to get behind. As for the Pistons, they got 2 second rounders, and Lord knows they need all the help they can get. The reality is, this move makes sense for both sides. If you put a gun to my head, though, and asked me to pick a winner, I'd say the Pistons. Because Wright really isn't going to help the Kings make the playoffs. And the Pistons did a good job in getting 2 extra picks. Moving on now to the Cavaliers trading JaVale McGee to the Nuggets for Isaiah Hartenstein and Denver's second rounders in 2023 and 2027. For whatever it's worth, the 2023 pick is top 46 protected. And this is a good move for the Nuggets. For a while, they've needed a backup center. We all know they have Jokic, one of the best players in the NBA, does everything for the Nuggets. We know that. I love watching him play. But sometimes he needs a rest. The guys spelling Jokic really haven't been that good. Zeke Naji hasn't been anything special. Isaiah Hartenstein hasn't been anything special. Bol is fun to speculate about, but as of right now, he hasn't put it all together. I'm not saying that I'm giving up on those three guys. I'm not. But the Nuggets are looking to go on a little bit of a run. They're the 5 seed in the West right now. And with the Lakers being without LeBron and AD, there's an opening for the Nuggets to leapfrog them. Clippers maybe too. This is a trade to help the Nuggets for now. McGee is going to be a free agent at the end of the year, so they'll be able to pencil in Najee or Bol for an expanded role next year if they want to. They gave up a guy in Hartenstein who was the odd man out. The Nuggets didn't draft him. They're not beholden to him. And I can certainly make the argument that he's the guy with the lowest potential of the threesome of himself, Najee, and Bol. The 2 seconds, I'll be honest with you, I really don't care about. This makes perfect sense for the Nuggets. It makes sense for the Cavs, too. They've been looking to get rid of McGee for a while now, and now they have a long-term backup, potentially, for Jared Allen. I like Hartenstein. I think he can develop into something. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Brad Dougherty or anything, but he can be a solid rotational player for him. You watch him play, you see the potential that's there. He's an old school center. He has talent. This move really makes sense for both teams. I'll say the Nuggets win it, though, because it's going to help them more for now. 55-45. At the end of the day, they're going to reap the benefits of this trade quicker than the Cavs will. And also, just one other thing. I give McGee a ton of credit for turning himself from Shaquille O'Neal's whipping boy on Shaqtin' a Fool, which was really funny, don't get me wrong. I loved watching those. But now he's turned into a good backup center. A guy who you really can't make fun of. Give him credit. Moving on now to the Kings, trading Nemanja Bjelica to the Heat in exchange for Mo Harkless and Chris Silva. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this trade. Bjelica really fell out of favor within the Kings organization. He was coming off the bench for Marvin Bagley. He really didn't like that. I'm not saying that was the wrong decision, but I know Bjelica was unhappy. And it was showing in his play. Bjelica is usually one of the better stretch fours in the game. This year he's shooting just 29.3% from beyond the arc. That is abysmal. 7.2 points per game isn't awful for a bench player, but Bjelica is usually better than that. Harkless and Silva are really nobodies. They weren't playing a lot for the Heat. The simple fact is, they're really not that good. I'm not a big fan of either of them. Give Pat Riley credit for turning two Schmagegis into a potentially solid stretch four for him. Good trade by the Heat. They easily win it. Moving on now to the three-team trade between the Sixers, Thunder, and Knicks. There's a lot to unpack here. George Hill is going to the 76ers. So is Ignas Brazdeikis. The Thunder are getting Tony Bradley, Austin Rivers, and the Sixers second rounders in 2025 and 2026. Meanwhile, the Knicks are getting Terrence Ferguson, Vincent Poirier, and the Sixers second rounder in this coming draft. I hope that made sense. I'll say this. I'm not sure where George Hill fits on the Sixers. The Sixers had a really good backcourt. Forget Ignas Brazdeikis. He's irrelevant. They have Ben Simmons and Seth Curry starting, with Shake Milton and either Furkan Korkmaz or Tyrese Maxey. Where does Hill fit in? I'm not saying Hill's a bad player. I like George Hill. Not better than Kawhi Leonard, shout out to you if you get that reference, but he just doesn't fit the Sixers. He just doesn't fill a need. You know what the Sixers really needed? A backup four. Specifically, a stretch four. Hill isn't going to be doing that. Let me tell you. For the Thunder to get Tony Bradley in this trade is really good. I like Bradley. I think he can turn into a really good old school center. Like, if he gets 30 minutes a night, I could really see him being a perennial double-double threat. Think like old school DeAndre Jordan. Really good defense also. We all know that the Thunder needed young guns. They just got a good one in Bradley. Austin Rivers really isn't that important. I really didn't like him with the Knicks this year. He's not bad or anything. You just don't need to worry about him. Bradley and the 2 seconds are why the Thunder did this. It's like a 2K challenge. How many picks can Sam Presti get? Let me tell you, if he doesn't build a dynasty with these picks, that's a bad job by him. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. Presti should be able to do more than that. As for the Knicks end of things, you got 2 schmagegis in Ferguson and Poirier. Ferguson, once upon a time, had potential. Now he really doesn't. I don't think he'll ever turn into a good rotation player. Vincent Poirier is a solid third center. If Mitchell Robinson gets hurt again, he can start Noel and Poirier can be the backup. He'll gobble up all the rebounds. It's not bad, it's just hard to get excited about this. from the Knicks end of things. They did get a second, though, so good job there. I'll say that the Thunder won this trade first and foremost. They got Tony Bradley, really good young center, and 2 seconds, which you know Presti loves. I'll say the Sixers are second, just because I can't say that the Knicks are ahead of them, because they got Terrence Ferguson, Vincent Poirier, and a second rounder. As much as Hill doesn't fit the Sixers, it's better than getting Ferguson and Poirier. Moving on now to a couple Raptors trades. I'll combine them because they're very similar. Matt Thomas is going to the Jazz in exchange for the Warriors second rounder this year. And Terrence Davis is going to the Kings in exchange for the Grizzlies second rounder this year. Thomas and Davis are both solid backup shooting guards. There are roles for them in the league. I don't want to knock them. They're solid role players. Davis is better, but Thomas has shown some shooting prowess. I don't mind the Raptors giving them up, though, because there's no way that they're making the playoffs this year. So, get a couple seconds for a couple guys who probably aren't in your grand plan going forward. Davis is a free agent at the end of the year. I don't mind that. I'll say this, though. Getting Thomas makes a lot of sense for the Jazz. They really needed another backup guard. Jordan Clarkson is probably the 6th man of the year. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone more deserving than him. But he's really been their only backup guard. Now you can slide Clarkson over to backup 1 so he can relieve Conley, and Thomas can relieve Mitchell. This is now suddenly a Jazz roster with very few holes. They're vulnerable to small ball. If you can get Gobert on the perimeter, you have a free lane to the hoop. The Clippers did it. But other than that, they are set. I'm not saying this because they beat a shorthanded and tired Nets team at home. But they have a fantastic chance to win the West. It is very possible that we get a Jazz Nuggets Western Conference Finals. The NBA would hate it, but those are probably the 2 best Western Conference teams on paper right now. As for Davis going to the Kings, I don't get it. They didn't need a backup shooting guard. They have De'Aaron Fox, they have Buddy Hield, they have Tyrese Halliburton, and they just traded for DeLon Wright. Why get Terrence Davis? It makes absolutely no sense. The Jazz won the Thomas trade, but the Raptors won the Davis trade. Moving on now to the Pelicans, trading J.J. Redick and Nicolo Melli to the Mavericks for James Johnson, Wesley Iwundu, and a second rounder this year. This stinks. My father asked me this morning, Jacob, do you think the Nets are going to do anything at the trade deadline? I said no. They made their big trade already. Do you see them doing anything in advance of the playoffs? because they have the Dinwiddie DPE and they have their MLE. I said yes, I think they'll be active on the buyout market. Who do you think they're going to go after? I said JJ Redick. They really needed a shooter. I'm tired of watching TLC. Oh, he stinks. Replace him with Redick? Oh my god. That team has no holes. I'm not going to get to see it though. I mean, this is a great trade for the Mavericks. You have Luka Doncic creating. All the attention's going to be on him. When everyone's focusing on him driving, he'll just kick it out to a guy like Redick, who's going to have a wide open three. I love the idea of Redick playing with Doncic and Porzingis. It's going to be absolutely lethal. And the Mavericks gave up like nothing to get him. James Johnson is a bully, a tough player. You don't want to tick him off. But that's all he does. He's massively overpaid. Thank God that contract is expiring. Wesley Iwundu really isn't that good. You don't need to know anything about him. The second rounder is nice, but again, it's just a second rounder. They did give up Nicolo Melli, who had a good rookie year, but has really fallen off in his sophomore year. I don't know who the real Melli is. I'll say this. I'd rather have Melli than Iwundu or the second. There is no question that the Mavericks win this trade. I know why the Pelicans did it. You get a second rounder for him as opposed to having to buy him out. And you get nothing in exchange. This is just tough. Hopefully a good wing shooter becomes available on the buyout market. Guys like Andre Drummond and LaMarcus Aldridge do nothing for me. The Nets don't need front court help. Moving on now to the Bulls, Celtics, and Wizards 3-team trade. The Bulls got Daniel Tice, Javonte Green, and Troy Brown. The Celtics got Luke Cornett and Mo Wagner. And the Wizards got Daniel Gafford and Chandler Hutchison. Daniel Tice is a solid backup center, fan favorite, energy guy, very good finisher, and he's a good defender. Javonte Green is really a nobody. I was never crazy about him. Troy Brown, once upon a time, looked like he could turn into a solid young gun. Last year, he had 10.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, and 2.5 assists per game. But this year, he's really fallen off. 4.3 points per game, and just under 3 rebounds per game, and 1 assist per game. Does he have potential? The answer is yes. Can you really bank on him turning into a solid role player? I wouldn't bet the rent on it. Luke Cornett has turned into a really good inside finisher, but that's about it. He's 7'2", and he can't rebound. He's a decent defender, which he better be at 7'2". But he's nothing special. I saw him a lot at Vanderbilt because my father went there. I was never that impressed with him. Mo Wagner I really like in 2018. I wanted him on the Nets desperately. The Lakers took him before the Nets could. I thought he was going to turn into a really good stretch big man. It didn't work out, but Wagner's still putting up 7 points per game, just under 3 rebounds per game, and he's playing the game smarter than ever. He always had a good basketball IQ. It seems like it's improved. I like Wagner a lot. Daniel Gafford is a fan favorite, hustle guy. A lot of Bulls fans liked him. Good inside finisher, good defender. There's a role for him in the league. You just really want his rebounding to get better. He can turn into a solid backup, though. He reminds me a lot of Robert Sacre when I watch him play. How's that for a weird comparison? And speaking of weird, Chandler Hutchison. Last year, the guy put up 7.8 points per game and shot 45.7% from the field. It looked like he was going to turn into a really good scorer. This year, he's shooting 27.8% from the field, is averaging under 2 points per game, and has just under 3 rebounds per game. That is bizarre. He's a bizarre player. I don't know what to make of him. Billy Donovan didn't like him. I gotta tell you, I don't blame him. I'll say that the Bulls won this trade first and foremost. They got a really good backup center in Daniel Tice, and Troy Brown can turn into a solid backup. Then comes the Celtics, followed by the Wizards. And I hesitate to call the Wizards winners here. I don't like this trade for them at all. And I'll say this from the Bulls' end of things, I'd rather have Wagner than Tice. But I'm not going to bang tables over that. Alright, so that's going to do it for today. I'm not going to talk about any other sports. I'll just keep this solely dedicated to the NBA. Truthfully, I didn't know if we were going to get any blockbusters. That's why I said I'd be open to doing other sports. But we got them. Sweet 16 preview tomorrow and more. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying, shout out to you, Jessica Walter.